Welcome back to Trying to Figure This Out. If you're back for another conversation, I'm really glad you're here. And if this happens to be your first time listening, welcome. These check ins are simply a chance for us to spend a few minutes together between the longer conversations. After our first episode, I found myself thinking about the question we left with: who are you becoming now? The funny thing about questions is that once you ask them, they have a way of following you around. They show up while you're driving, while you're mowing the yard, while you're sitting on the porch, or while you're laying awake in bed when you should probably be asleep. This happened to me this week. I couldn't stop thinking about what it really takes to begin the next chapter of our lives. Not just dreaming about it, not talking about it, actually the first step. And that led me to another question. Imagine that. What if the only thing standing between the life we have and the life we want is one decision we've been afraid to make? I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Not because I have all the answers, honestly, because I'm asking myself the same questions. I think every one of us gets to a point where we see the next chapter. It may not be clearly, but we know it's there. We can feel it. It's that idea that you can't shake. The business you've thought about starting, the book you've wanted to write, the career you have imagined, the conversations you've needed to have, the places that you've always wanted to live or go. Whatever it is, it just keeps showing up. Now, here's what I've realized: most of us don't ignore those thoughts because we're lazy. We ignore them because we're scared. We're scared we'll fail. We're scared people will judge us. We're scared we will disappoint our loved ones. We're scared we'll be leaving something comfortable for something uncertain. And maybe that's the biggest fear of them all. What if it doesn't work? I've been there. Truthfully, I'm there sometimes still. Lately, I have found myself asking a different question. What if it does work? The one question has changed the way I've been looking at almost everything. I'll let you in on something. When I decided to start this podcast, I didn't suddenly become fearless. I still had all the same doubts. I wondered if anybody would listen. I wondered if people would think I was crazy for starting something so late in life. I wondered if I'd waited too long. I wondered, were there already too many podcasts? I wondered if I had something to say and if anybody wanted to hear it. And then one morning I caught myself. For weeks I had been asking, what if it doesn't work? I hadn't spent 5 minutes asking myself this next question: what if this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? That's a completely different question, because one question keeps you standing still, the other one asks you to move. Think about that for a second. How many opportunities have we talked ourselves out of? Not because we weren't capable, but because we had answered a question we should have never been asking in the first place. Re- I've realized something. Regret scares me a whole lot more than failure does. Failure has always been a teacher. Every mistake I've ever made taught me something. Every setback showed me something. Failure eventually lets you go. Regret does not. Regret has a way of showing up years later. Usually, when life gets quiet, it whispers, I wonder what would have happened if you had just tried. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live a life that way. I don't want to spend the next 20 years wondering. Maybe that's what turning 51 has done for me. It's made me realize that time is becoming more valuable than certainty. I don't have another 25 years to keep talking myself out of things that matter. If I want to write, I should write. If I want to start a podcast, I should start a podcast. If I want to build something meaningful, I should start building it. Not because I know it'll succeed, because I'd rather know than wonder. You know what else I've been pondering? Our brains are incredible. They believe what we repeatedly tell them. If every morning I wake up saying, I'm too old, my brain starts collecting evidence that I'm too old. If I keep saying, I'm not creative, my brain starts proving me right. If I keep saying people like me don't do things like this, eventually I stop trying. But what happens if I change the conversation? What happens if I change the question? What if instead we say, am I still growing? I've lived enough life to have something worth sharing. I don't need permission to begin. Now my brain has a different job. Now it's looking for evidence to prove those things true. I started thinking about something the other day. If one of my kids came to me and said, Dad, I've got this idea, do you know what I'm going to tell them? I tell them, go for it. I tell them, they'll figure it out. I would remind them that they don't have to have the answer before they begin. I'd encourage them. I'd believe in them. So, why is it that we're willing to encourage the people we love, but we're so quick to talk ourselves out of our own dreams. Isn't that interesting? Maybe the conversation we need to change isn't with the world. Maybe it's the one we have with ourselves every single morning. Because honestly, I believe this. The stories we tell ourselves eventually become the lives we live. So maybe the first thing we need to rewrite, it's not our careers, it isn't our circumstances, it isn't our future. Maybe it's the story. So here's the question I've been carrying around this week. If fear wasn't allowed to have a vote, what's the very next step you would take? Not the whole journey, just the next step. Would you make that phone call? Would you write that first page? Would you try to start that business? Would you record your first podcast episode? Would you apply for that job? Would you have the conversation you've been trying to avoid? Whatever it is, maybe your next chapter isn't waiting on confidence. Maybe it's waiting on a decision. Anyway, that's what's been rolling around in my head this week. And if I've learned anything lately, it's this: courage doesn't usually show up before we begin, it shows up because we begin. I'll be pondering that this week, and maybe you will too. I'll see you soon.